How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. And in today's video, we've got 3 topics to cover, starting out with a huge optimization for low VRAM machines, aka the Steam Machine that Valve just figured out right in time for the Steam Machine's launch. After that, it's a huge week for brand new games on the Steam Deck, so I've got 3 to recommend. And finally, is Valve preparing to release the Steam Controller standalone, or are some people reading this situation wrong? As usual, I hope you're having a great week playing a ton of video games. I have 3 levels left in Ace Combat 4. Then I'm going to finally start Replaced. I'm so excited for this game, but we'll talk about that in the second news story. Let me know what you're playing down in the comments below, but let's get into the first topic here and talk about VRAM. And the reason we're talking about VRAM today is because A, there's a huge fix for it, and B, that's the biggest point of criticism I think people have for the Steam Machine. We're in a situation where games just need more than 8 gigabytes on PC, but then Valve's counter to that is like 70% of people have GPUs with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, so like it's really on the developers to start optimizing their games better. And I, in this situation, side with Valve. I think developers have gotten absolutely out of control with the amount of space their games take up, the poor optimization, and the level of VRAM that they require, but that's here nor there. But even though the Steam Machine only has 8 gigabytes of dedicated VRAM, if it needs to, it can also take advantage of system RAM through a situation called GTT. And even though that's cool, it's not what you really want to see, because once you start using system RAM as VRAM, it introduces stuttering, it introduces frame pace issues, it just makes the game worse to play overall. So it was a problem that needed to be solved. Then there's a second layer to all this where Linux can't prioritize. So if you not only have a game running that's taking up a lot of VRAM, you also have a web browser running, you have Discord running, you have a lot of stuff taking up VRAM all at the same time. Linux can't look at what's being ran all together and say, oh, the game should take priority in terms of what can use VRAM. So because it's so big, it'll push chunks of what the game needs over to the GTT side of the fence, and it'll just create all those problems I just talked about. So Valve hired a Linux developer named Natalie Valk to just figure this out, and that's exactly what she did. So now, if you're playing a game and you have other stuff open running in the background, Linux will be able to look at that and say, okay, this game is a game. It's going to take up a lot of VRAM. So instead of splitting it 50-50 between VRAM and then GTT, I'm going to give as much of the VRAM as possible specifically to this game, and then shift the other stuff that's smaller over to the other side of the fence, and then we'll get better performance in the game. And because these things aren't graphically intensive programs, they're probably not going to have very many issues, if any at all, using GTT instead of VRAM. I know that's a lot of terminology. That was like the most top level I could get. The point is, the Steam Machine has been optimized to utilize its 8 gigabytes of VRAM much better than it did before. And the cool icing on the cake, or cherry on top, however you want to say it, is that if you're running a Linux machine and you only have 8 gigabytes to play around with your GPU, you're going to get these same benefits once they launch in SteamOS or whatever distro you're using, because they're kernel level. So like once the kernel that has it is what your distro gets, you're good to go, and your 8 gigabyte machine will get a much longer life, which is good because the Steam Machine's brand new, so you don't want it to feel old once it finally comes out. You know what I'm saying? This obviously sounds awesome to me. I think they should continue this work and maybe make GTT better so that it doesn't cause frame pacing or stuttering issues, because I just don't think developers are ever going to learn that this is a huge problem for people specifically on PC, and they're just going to keep commanding more games use more VRAM all the time, because like the biggest leak around the PlayStation 6 that everyone's frothing at the mouth over is that it's going to have 24 gigabytes of RAM, which is an unheard of level of VRAM that's going to be available for the machine. And it's like, that's cool. I think that's going to make it more expensive, A, and B, I just think developers should optimize their games before they release them. Like, stop making us buy new hardware to make up for your lack of finishing your game. Like, I say this all the time, but I feel like sometimes I'm just yelling into a void when I talk about this. Like, why is it on us to spend way more money than we really should have to, and not on the developers to finish their work? Like in any other job, if you had a project with a deadline of Friday and you didn't finish it in time but still turned it in instead of just requesting more time, aka delaying your your game, like obviously you're going to get in trouble. You can't just half finish your work in the real world. So why are we being expected to extend developers this courtesy? And I understand that at the top level, the executives are the ones that want it out in the fiscal quarter, blah, blah, blah. They need to learn the lesson too. Like, I don't know what to do other than not buy games at launch. That really just seems like the only way to get through to them, because that results in less money. This has been happening over the past few years, and developers just seem to throw their hands up and lay everyone off. So I don't really know what the solve is. So while that is happening, I'm glad Valve is working on optimizing this stuff, because it doesn't really result in us spending more money. Like, they're just optimizing the operating system. So ultimately it's an extremely good thing. And obviously the results need to be seen to be believed, but it sounds really good. And if you just look at stuff they've contracted before, like Lepton, Fex, and Proton, I mean, those are just net wins at the end of the day, and they work phenomenally. So I think this is going to be good for the Steam Machine at launch. But moving over to the Steam Machine's handheld brother, the Steam Deck, this is a huge week for games, and I wanted to highlight 3 that are dropping this week that all run great on the Steam Deck. So in terms of AAA, you've got Pragmata. I've talked about this game a few times on the channel. It's the new third-person shooter from Capcom, where it looks like a realistic take on Mega Man, where you're this guy, you go to a space station that's been taken over by a rogue AI, there's creepy robots walking around, and then you find this little robot girl and you put her on your back and she can hack the robots, and it seems like a cool, classic, story-driven third-person action-adventure game that I love. Those are my favorite types of games. Like Metal Gear Solid 3, I just played through that, still holds up. It's like excellent. I love Uncharted. I like these third-person, linear, story-driven, gameplay-driven action-adventure games that we don't see anymore because everyone's so focused on open world or roguelites or Souls-like. So I'm excited for this game, and the cool thing is it runs pretty well on the Steam Deck. It defaults to very low, which will get you around 40 FPS in the game. The only change you have to make is change FSR to FSR3 and set it to balance to just get a cleaner image for the same performance. But if you want better graphics, you can drop it to 30, turn on volumetric lighting, and also bump the hair up. And I think that's what I'm going to do when I play it on the Steam Deck, because I don't mind playing games at 30 on the Steam Deck, and I like a middle ground where you get good graphics and decent performance. Decent to me is 30, but there is an option. If you want a higher FPS, just leave it default, change FSR3 to balanced, you're good to go. And this game's cleaning up in reviews. It's getting like 8s, 9s, and 10s across the board. I don't think I've seen one go below 8, so I think this is going to be a good game. And it looks like it's structured like Resident Evil, where the first playthrough will take 8 to 10 hours, and then to clean up platinums and extra challenges, it'll take like 20 hours, which seems like a pretty good value for $70. So that covers the AAA games. Let's talk about AA now, because Mouse PI for Hire is finally releasing. This is a first-person shooter with 1930s animation style, kind of like Cuphead, but it's also a first-person shooter where you're playing as totally not Mickey Mouse. He's a private investigator. The shooting looks awesome to me, like the way that it's all hand animated and stuff. I don't know if it's hand animated, but if they use computers, it looks really good. And this one also got great reviews. They did release a really cool little spec sheet before the game came out that had every handheld under the sun. It's like, here's how you should run it on the Xbox Ally, the Ally X, and the Steam Deck. On the Steam Deck, if you set it to medium, you can lock it at 40 FPS and it looks and plays great. My friend Dustin from the Sacred Symbols podcast has his own channel that I help him out with the thumbnails and the titles, and he did a video on this, so I got early access to it. I looked through what he said because he got a review code. Seems like a really cool game. So if you're looking for a game with a brand new, totally unique art style and also pretty solid first-person shooting that's going to look and run great on the Steam Deck, this feels like an easy recommendation. But the third recommendation is the one I'm most excited for. This game is called Replaced, and I've been waiting years for it. It's a 2.5D sort of Metroidvania, sort of like linear action game. It reminds me of Arkham Origins Blackgate on the PlayStation Vita, which was an Arkham game where it turned it sideways and you were in Blackgate prison and it was 2.5D. The reason it reminds me of Arkham is mainly because of the combat, where, you see the yellow icon over someone's head, you hit a button to counter, you hit them in between those hits, and then you have a little bar that looks like a gun in the bottom left corner. Once that's full, after successful counters, you get an execution with the gun, and it looks awesome. The graphics are amazing. It's like really shimmery pixel art in the HD 2D style that Square Enix came up with, but with 3D style modern lighting in the background. The story takes place in a dystopian future in America where you are taken over by an AI and you're trying to kill a big mean AI. It just seems like a really damn cool game that's pulling from a bunch bunch of movies I like, and it runs great on the Steam Deck. 40 FPS, just lock it at that out of the box because it doesn't have graphic settings and you'll be good to go. It has stuff like puzzle solving, platforming, great combat. The story looks cool. The music is awesome. The graphics are amazing. Like, this looks like an excellent product for 20 bucks. And I feel like out of any of these three games, if you really want a AAA game, I would go for Pragmata. But if you're interested in a cool indie game that feels like it's made for the Steam Deck, it's impossible not to recommend Replaced. Like, the demo was so good, I can't imagine the game being any less good. So yeah, 4 years in, we've still got great recommendations for the Steam Deck coming every week in 2026. I am really happy about that. I think it's awesome. And then in the meantime, I'll continue my playthrough of the Ace Combat series, but let's get into the third news story here and talk about the Steam controller. So I talked about this in the last video, but Brad Lynch, sadly it's Bradley, discovered a huge shipping manifest that said Valve was getting a huge shipment of Steam controllers here in the United States. And immediately my mind went to them getting ready to launch the Steam machine because we're getting close to the halfway point of 2026. The RAM situation is improving. Like, everything is kind of lining up in a good way in the sense that it looks like we're getting closer to the release of the Steam hardware, especially when you take into account how many specific updates SteamOS has gotten over the past few weeks that specifically reference the Steam machine. Like, everything kind of lined up there. And then when I was looking through news stories today for this video, I saw every website under the sun saying that they're preparing to release the Steam controller standalone. And while I think that would be cool, I don't think they're going to, just because it creates two launch moments, right? Like, obviously they waited while some of this hardware was done to announce it all at once to make sure everyone knew about it all at the same time. And I just feel like releasing the Steam controller standalone only to release the Steam machine and Steam Frame just a few weeks later, that creates a lot of unnecessary work for Valve because people have already waited this long. What's just a few more weeks if you can launch everything at the same time? With that said, I wouldn't be mad at all if they released the Steam controller. I would love to have it right now for my main addiction game, which is Gray Zone Warfare. It doesn't have built-in controller support just yet, and I doubt it ever will because it's such a hardcore game. But having the trackpads, having the gyro, I can just see myself playing it on my big TV with my Linux PC, my SteamOS PC, I mean. So like, that would be a really good candidate for the Steam controller. And also games like Road to Vostok or Escape from Duckov, none of these games have built-in controller support. So having a good PC-centric controller with the trackpads that's pulling over all the learning from the Steam Deck, and will probably be able to use the exact same controller profiles that are already made for the Steam Deck, that sounds awesome. And of course, there's a lot of people out there that have PCs that are much better than what the Steam machine's going to offer, so they probably want to buy the controller as well. I love to be an optimist, but I just don't see it. Like, it just seems like an unnecessary amount of work for them to do when things are already stressful for them in terms of just getting this hardware out there in the first place. So if I had to bet on it, I'm like 60-40 in terms of them holding off and this being a sign that the overall hardware ecosystem is ready to launch versus them getting ready for just launching the controller. Because as I said in the last video, I feel like the moment for that is past. I feel like the moment to release the Steam controller was back when they delayed it. And maybe they didn't have them in hand because they're obviously getting a huge shipment now, but I don't know, something's weird about it. I'm not fully ready to commit like every other news site under the sun. I put this at the end of the video because it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to talk about it to round out the video. But yeah, that brings me to the end of this one. Really positive stuff happening between, you know, this work with GTT and VRAM optimization, and of course 3 big games coming to Steam Deck. Also, the weather finally turned here in Southeast Michigan. It's a little rainy, but we get these pockets of sunshine. And all last night, like from 5 p.m. till like 10, I was in the backyard playing Ace Combat 4 with my legs kicked up on the Steam Deck. That's my favorite situation to be in overall. So I hope your week's going as good as mine. Anyway, guys, as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.